What is up, y'all? I'm Benjamminoutdoors, and this is my channel. Today I'm actually reviewing these fairings from Monster Fairings, kind of giving you an overview of what they look like and how I feel about them and how they performed. Because I've actually had a few sets of these already and I don't really have any complaints. The previous bike that I had Monster Fairings on was my green CBR, and I was actually really pleasantly surprised with how easy it was to work with the design team from Monster Fairings, because those weren't OEM fairings. Those weren't a color that they make normally. That was a custom color, custom design, and he was more than happy to help me, and it was a really smooth process. The customer service has been excellent in my experience so far. You do pay a little bit of a premium because of that though. They are a little bit more expensive than the stuff on eBay or Amazon, but every time I've reached out to the customer service team or the design team, they've gotten back to me pretty quickly, and I have no complaints there. In terms of fitment, as long as you rebuild the bike properly, make sure there's no bent fairing stays, no bent fairing tabs, stuff like that, you shouldn't have an issue with fitment. All these ABS fairings are put into a mold, so there shouldn't be really any variation in it. I haven't had any issues with the Monster fairings, but I haven't even had any issues with the cheap eBay fairings, like the $300, $400 eBay fairings. So maybe I've been lucky, or maybe I've just rebuilt the bikes properly. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty happy with the fitment. I will say with a lot of the fairing bolt kits you get with any fairings, whether that be Monster or some on eBay or whatever, they lack a lot of stuff. They're just a really general bolt kit, and so you have to make sure, if you can, pull every single clip off, every single bolt off. That's OEM. Make sure your old fairings have nothing on them. I've actually spent so much time trying to track down just like the clips that go on the back of fairings to be able to screw a bolt to, or it's been a nightmare. So that is the one downside to going with a non-OEM kit. But then again, as I say that, there's no like fairing kit from Honda or fairing kit from Yamaha. So you have to buy all the parts individually. So you have to buy all those fairing bolts and clips individually anyway. And it would be insanely expensive from Honda itself. So as long as you have your old fairings, you can pull everything off of it, and you get the new fairings, you're able to put everything on it, there shouldn't be any issues. With that being said, I don't really have any complaints. They look great, they fit great in my experience. There's been no really major issues that I've come across. And if it has been, it's typically been a fairing tab that was bent wrong, or so I kind of had to just sit there and make sure my bike was good when I was putting them together. But compared to the price that you pay for OEM, it's significantly better. Apparently, the Chinese fairings, all of them, apparently they're more brittle. They break easier than the OEM. Like apparently the OEM, they have a lot more flex in them. So if you get another wreck, I guess, they're hold up better, but if you wreck, again, I wouldn't want to try to sand and get all the imperfections out of a fairing that was scraped along the concrete, so I'd buy a new set of fairings anyway. But, people like the OEM, and I like the OEM too, but it's just so expensive. It's hard to justify that, especially when somebody could easily wreck this down the road. I mean, and two, like for me, if I rebuild a bike, I can't justify spending $2 grand, $2,500 on a set of fairings when the bike only goes for $5 grand. It doesn't make financial sense. So that's why I kind of get all these Chinese fairing kits, and so far I haven't had any complaints. So there are a few things that I'm going to show you in a second that I do differently than some people might do. Now let's look at it up close. There's a few things I do differently when I'm installing these fairings. Not because of the fairings themselves, but because I don't have the OEM stuff. These little plastic clips, they go in and pop into like holes and lock in, are supposed to go up in there. I actually drilled a few holes and put some zip ties holding the nose to the side fairing. So zip ties are a little more reliable in my opinion. These things, I actually bought a large quantity from China. Surprisingly, none of those fit. So I bought all those for nothing. None of those fit on, so far, any of the sport bikes that I have. So I kind of had to come up with something else to be able to hold those in there. And so the zip ties work great. And at high speeds, they hold together. So I don't love that, but that's an example of buying OEM stuff that would solve that issue. But I don't want to have to sit there and find the part number and all that kind of stuff. Even though this is like an OEM fairing color, I was able to send them a photo of the guy who owned it previously, the guy who passed away on it, and they were able to match everything to a T. Every sticker, the color, everything. And so it looks exactly like his bike when he had it. So I'm super happy with the restoration. Let's take it outside and see what it looks like out in the real sun instead of these LEDs. Bike looks amazing. You got the Gixxer peeking around the corner right there.